Unsettling encounter at work. So, a little introduction. I work in a big entertainment store that sells DVDs, CDs, games, etc. in a city center, and get lots of customers all the time asking for all sorts of things. I work in the DVD department, and earlier today, this man came up to me and asked about Batman, so I led him over to the DVD section where the Batman DVDs were. The man had pretty unruly hair, dead eyes, and a chapped lip. He was probably around 40 years old, but dressed quite young, with a band t-shirt and skinny jeans. He proceeded to repeat, "This isn't the real Batman. This isn't the real Batman. Where's Batman? Where's Batman?" I was getting very confused, so I repeated, "This is where the Batman DVDs are." And he said, "These are DVDs. Where is the real Batman?" Whilst pulling up his shirt a tiny bit and looking down at himself. Then he looked back up and stared right fucking through me. At this point, he just started firing off names at me like, "Where's Batman? Where's Robin? Where's Clark Kent? Where's Spider-Man?" It's a roundabout now. I was sure he was taking the piss out of me, but there was no hint of amusement in his eyes. There was no hint of anything. When he was staring right at me, he ended with, "Where's Michael Jackson?" So I said, "DVD or CD?" And then he got really agitated and said, No, I haven't got the time for this." And then rolled up his sleeve to show a hospital tag on his wrist. And he pointed at it and held it up and repeated, "We haven't got enough time for this," seemingly really pissed off that I hadn't helped him. And he turned around and just walked slowly out. I had to watch as he left slowly, and his head disappeared as he went down the escalator, but it freaked me out. Thought it was worth posting here. My stalker, Batman. In the late 1990s, I was living in South Texas, in my mid-20s and engaged to be married. I went to cosmetology school to get a certificate as a nail technician, attending classes at a local beauty school for a 2-month or so long course. At the time that I began classes, I was the only Anglo there. Aside from me and a black woman, everyone else was Hispanic, including Batman. Even though he denied it, if he had a name other than Batman, I never knew it. Batman was crazy, schizophrenic, and believed that he was Bruce Wayne, also known as, you guessed it, Batman. I was never sure why exactly Batman was there, but he was a fixture of sorts at the school. He was in his early 30s, obviously deeply, scarily mentally unbalanced, and desperate for female attention. The teachers and administrators took complete advantage of Batman's problems and personality, and used them as a sort of gopher when they wanted something. I once saw him run at a dead sprint at the height of a Texas summer to the Dairy Queen 4 blocks away, just to get the admin a blizzard. He hung around all day long, creeping all over everyone, and I became his favorite target. For as long as I was there, the teachers would tease Batman about his crush on me. "He really likes white girls," they would sneer, giggling. Batman began to stop creeping so much on other students, and would stand by my table and entertain me with the ideas of his delusions. He may have been schizophrenic in any case. He heard voices. The loudest voice belonged to the Colonel, and apparently talked non-stop about killing people. He told me in great detail about how he was really Bruce Wayne, and his stupid Mexican parents were just fakes, secret agents who were working against him. I really wanted to bring up that the fictional Batman's parents were dead, but I didn't want to show interest in any of his shit, for fear I might wake up with him skinning me at night. As I got closer to graduating, Batman got scarier. My fiancée used to come pick me up after class was over, and Batman became very hostile, but never made a move or said anything to him. Mainly because my then fiancé, now husband, is 6'5" and looks like a biker. I got married while attending classes there, and the day before my wedding, my fiancé came in and, while he intended to get a crew cut, there was a misconnection, and the girl ended up shaving his head with no guard on the clippers. The next time I saw Batman, he had shaved his head too. It was terrifying, even if it hadn't been creepy, because I knew he'd done it after he'd seen my fiance's hair. It also made him look disturbingly like Bork's crazed stalker, the one who tried to send her a mail bomb and then shot himself on camera. The teachers were still less than helpful, asking him to please keep Batman away from me because he made me feel uncomfortable. Just made them tell him that I shouldn't have gotten married and that he needed to step up and make me see how much he loved me. I have to believe that they didn't actually mean me any harm and didn't really understand just how unbalanced and possibly dangerous Batman could be. They didn't understand that this was probably the worst possible thing they could have said. They just wanted to stand back and giggle while I squirmed under Batman's creepy attentions. The last day, I was thrilled to be graduating. I hated coming to school not just because of Batman. I was desperate to be free of the cool girls clique and high school atmosphere too. The teachers really leaned on teasing Batman that day. "Oh, she's leaving! You'll never see her again, Batman. You better do something." By the time I was leaving, I was extremely on edge. Batman hung on to me like a tick you just can't get to move. He kept offering to take me home, that I didn't need my husband. He'd take care of me, on and on and on and on. The building was shut and locked up for the evening. The teachers and students were all heading out to their cars, and I was stuck waiting for my husband, who I picked today of all days to be late. I came very close to begging one of the more sympathetic teachers to stay, but she left too. The only nearby phone was inside the building, locked up. No one had cell phones back then. I was alone. I was alone with Batman. Standing outside the building, I was scanning the street anxiously, while Batman tried to convince, plead, or somehow, I don't know, try to get me into going with him to get his truck. I mean, he lived nearby, I think. He would give me a free ride home, he said, and show me how he felt about me. I kept insisting that I needed to wait for my husband. And this is when Batman got very intense. He never touched me, but the intensity in his eyes was terrifying. He finally declared that he was going to get his truck and I'd see. He'd show me. The minute he was out of sight, I ran. I cut through the parking lot to the next set of buildings, ducking down behind a dumpster and keeping an eye on the road and parking lots. I saw his truck come back, cruising slowly through the lot, and then an adjacent one, farther away from me. When I saw his truck move back on the street, I ran again, heading for the grocery store nearby. I remember standing in front of the store, buffeted by the waves of people going in and out, and the blast of cold air when the doors opened, shaking and terrified. I hoped that being in a public place would keep me safe. If I saw his truck, I could run inside. My husband would be able to see me, hopefully, when he drove by and picked me up. Otherwise, I had no way of calling him. I was definitely not going back to the school. Eventually, my husband did show up. I got into the car as soon as he pulled up, before he'd even brake properly, tearing open the door and bursting into tears. I never went back to the beauty school or saw Batman again. I've known mentally unbalanced people before, been in dangerous situations before, but I can't ever remember being as afraid for my life as I was standing there alone with Batman. I truly believe that if I hadn't run, he would have killed me. The Joker. I don't tell this story to many people. Sometimes it's hard to recall, and other times, uncomfortable. But I figure it's time. When I was 17 years old, my mother sent me to my second private school of the Christian variety. It was miserable for me, as I was an atheist and quite the troubled teen. This may come into play later on. The school didn't have buses. The students either drove, were driven, or walked. I walked. It took about 45 minutes for me to travel the distance to the school, and I've always had bad joints, so any relief was welcome. On one particular day, it had started to rain about halfway through my walk. A woman in a nurse's uniform stopped and offered to give me a ride. I politely declined. Then, a rather good-looking man, in my opinion, I've always had an unconventional taste in men, stopped not too long after the woman left. I noticed that he had already driven past me once and stopped at a store, but I didn't see any plastic bags or such in his car. By this point, I didn't care who took me home. I was tired, wet, and hurting too much to think properly. So, I climbed in and we started chatting. I had him stop at the end of my street instead of taking me to the house. I thought I was rather clever, and we exchanged DeviantArt usernames. Over the course of the next few weeks, we became good friends. We messaged each other through the art-sharing website and eventually traded numbers. He said he was in college, we share a mutual interest in comic books, and he overall was generally very kind. What stuck out for us was our shared love for Harley Quinn and the Joker. He decided that I was his Harley, he was my Joker, and we were meant to be. But things slowly began to get a little weird. He started showing up at my school in his truck. I never told him where I had went to school, so I don't know how he figured that out. But my guess was the uniform was a dead giveaway. Not too strange. Not for good friends. So I allowed him to drive me most of the way. Then he started to show up at my house. At night. I remember very vividly sneaking down to the dining room where we kept the books because I was itching for something to read. And I noticed through the window someone driving by very slowly. I instantly knew it was him, even before he turned down the curve, and I got a look at the side of his car for confirmation I knew. But then again, I tried to shake it off and tell myself I was only imagining that it was him. His vehicle wasn't rare around the area, right? In fact, it was common. Then everything flipped onto its head just a few months later. Without my mother's permission, there's that wild child in me that got me into this mess. I invited him to the house to watch the 80s Batman film, an obvious classic. I told a friend of mine beforehand that I was planning to have the Joker over that night, while my mother and stepfather were gone. Thank God for this friend, who had apparently told them. They had reason to suspect that the guy was dangerous, based on what was already going on. I guess I just didn't see it. My father, who didn't live in this house, buzzed down the door and slammed him down to the floor with a gun to his head. He threatened this man, told him never to speak to me again, and pulled the trigger. When the gun clicked, by the way, he shit himself. My father beat him up a bit, threw him up against his own car and forced him to leave. In all the fuss, my mom calmed me down and explained that the friend I had made was a 27-year-old sex offender. Just a year or so prior to meeting me, he had raped a 13-year-old girl in another state after finally getting her alone in her parents' home. He wasn't in college. He was living with his mother just a few streets away from me. But my encounter didn't end there. That same night, my father, who was friends with many police officers in the area, got a call from one such cop saying that my stalker had dressed himself up to look like the Joker and was found driving recklessly on the wrong side of the highway, apparently out of grief for losing me. They arrested him, but only held him overnight. Now, over the course of the next year, at least twice a week on the average, I'd be woken up in the middle of the night by a tap on my second-floor bedroom window. He would throw pebbles to try to get me to come out. Sometimes I would open the windows to tell him to leave. My stepdad was angry with me for bringing this man into our lives and blamed me for the stress he caused us, so I didn't want to bring it up too often that he was still around. When it escalated to the point that He would climb onto the roof at 2 a.m. in the morning. We called the cops. He always disappeared before they arrived, and they could never prove that it was him, so he was never arrested. One night, he even sent me a text that read, "Come out to play." I remember hiding in the dark of my room that night, watching him look for a way into the house after sending me that invitation before running off as the police arrived. The slightest noise outside my window still causes me to jump. Then, I start to find gifts left on the roof below my window. Plastic necklaces, letters, and at one point, a rose. The creepiest message I received was a letter expressing his love and a basic, "If I can't have you, no one will" message. But he never acted on it. It wasn't until I moved out of my parents' house at 18 years old that things began to slow down. But he still tried to contact me through fake Facebook accounts and false phone numbers of that sort. For 2 more years after that, even if attempted contact was spaced apart by months, he still tried to find or speak to me. I found that, instead of trying to actively force him out of my life, ignoring him was much more effective. The last time he contacted me 2 years ago, he sent me a text from a number I hadn't yet blocked, saying he was truly and sincerely sorry for putting me through what he did. He told me he would leave me alone after that, and he did. Sometimes I still expect him to reappear, even though I've moved states away. I still look over my shoulder when I walk to the park and shut all the blinds at night. My heart still jumps when I receive a phone call from an unknown phone number. I wish I had refused a ride from him or gone in the car with the kind nurse that day, so many years ago. But at the end of the day, when I'm able to fall asleep without fear of oncoming nightmares, as a result of God knows what he could have done to me that night, I thank the God or whatever universe there may be out there that my friend loved me enough to snitch on me. That's all that really matters.